Well, this is Cabin Conversations, a weekly podcast here at Woodlands Church. I'm Dave Bondison, here with co-host Whitney Swenson.
Hey, Dave.
Hello, Whitney.
Hi.
And we have the privilege, our guest this week is none other than Jon.
Yeah.
Jon Uten.
Yeah. Glad to be here.
Yeah.
Is Jon short for something?
Yes. Jon is short for Jonathan.
Okay.
Yeah.
was there another option?
Yeah.
No.
For what it could be short of?
It's short for
It's something
Ebenezer.
wild. Yeah.
Short by
Yeah.
something completely random.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
good. Yeah. No. What's your middle name, Jon?
Reeder. Reeder.
Reeder.
Yes. Yes.
Good question.
Yeah. Didn't see that coming. Yeah. Yeah. It's not a normal last name. It's my dad's middle name and my grandma's maiden name.
Oh, I
okay.
like that.
Okay.
It's kind of one of those that carried on.
Yeah,
And
I like that a lot.
So
yeah.
we talked about that just a couple weeks ago with
Your mama.
my mom's
Mhm.
middle name is her maiden name, but I haven't heard it infiltrating into the male side, which is awesome.
Right. Not normal. Yeah. I always have to explain my middle name because it's not a
No, I've
normal
never
name.
met anyone.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So Reeder.
No readers. Yeah, my great-grandfather was a worship pastor. And my other great-grandfather was a preacher, and each of them had a son. One of them had a son and one of them had a daughter,
Yeah.
and that's how they got to know one another.
So your great grandfather was a worship pastor?
Yes.
That's pushing into like greatest generation era, probably, right? Turn of the
Yes.
millennium,
Yep.
1900s.
Yep.
That seems like to have a worship pastor at a church in that era
Right.
seems relatively surprising.
Kind of bizarre, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He was a
Timelines.
worship pastor and then started doing itinerant worship leading and then met my other great-grandfather, who was a guy named Franklin Polk Uten. And he was entered into being an itinerant speaker. And so they decided to work together.
Itinerantly lead church.
Yeah. So go from place to place. And then my grandfather, who was the youngest of 11, and then he had a daughter who was the youngest of a lot too. And so they said, I've got a son, you've got a daughter. And they met each other and
Is that how it
Thus-
works?
Arranged? Is it an
I don't know
arranged
if it was
marriage?
arranged or not.
Hey, Whitney, I've got a son.
You've got a daughter.
I never really
That's how
asked
this
that
works.
question. Actually, that would have been a great question to
Yeah.
ask. But, so they ended up making that connection. And
Yeah.
so there you have it.
The rest, as they say, is history.
So
And
kind of
now
a
your middle
bizarre-
name.
Yep. And my
Cool.
middle name. So Jonathan Reeder Uten
Mhm.
gets both families in.
I like that.
The transition here is just so natural because our
Right.
question that we're asking second-time guests, and that is you, is where, when, how do you read? Jonathan Reeder.
R-E-A-D.
Nice. I
Yes.
saw what you did
I know.
there.
Yeah. So that was
pretty
just a
nice.
natural step into
Did
that.
you see my scrunched up face? I'm like, how is this a natural?
Reader. Yeah, no, we're
Reader,
just
I
we're
get it.
curious about reading habits, or I think
Sure.
you can kind of expand that to content consumption because I get
Because he disagrees that I listen to books and he doesn't think that that's reading.
I think it's consuming. So I'm just semantically fussy.
Yeah, you are semantically fussy.
That is a great
Wow.
descriptor of you at some
So-
point in your, like when you're writing an
There we
audio
go.
biography.
Yeah. He was a
Semantically
semantically
fussy
fussy
guy.
man.
So
I'd probably take in content. I listen to books, but most of the times when I listen to books, it's not, it's fiction.
Sure.
Because for me, when I take in content, I like to interact with it more analytically. So
Mhm.
when I listen to it, unless it's something if it's something that's really challenging, I don't like to listen to it.
okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. And so usually I have two places. If I'm at home, we have a porch that I've kind of now deemed my
Mhm.
place where I would read. It's got a little fireplace and you can
Nice.
see out the backyard. Yeah, it's a really nice little space. And then oftentimes after I drop the kids off from school, I come in and I've got that white chair in my room and I sit there by the window and that's where I take in most of my consumption. So usually between 7:45 and about 8:45, I'm hanging out there.
So you have what you would describe as kind of a set apart time of your day that you're going to be consuming
Yeah.
content.
Yep. And sometimes it's in the Word, and sometimes it's I'm reading a couple books right now. One is leading the church through a time of sexual questioning by Bruce Miller, and then I'm also going through Evangelical Convictions,
Hey,
which is an
get it?
EFCA kind of licensing sort of a thing. So I do that one. And then I'm also reading the Cadi book.
Developing
Developing female leaders. Yep.
I just realized I have to write a lot of words down as you went through that because we do lists. So
Sure.
readers, just a reminder, all of these. So if you want to casually read Leading the Church Through a Time of Sexual Questioning, that book title and author will be in the show notes.
It's in the show notes. Do you have, so at the end of the year, do you have a favorite book that you've read in 2023? Is there like a most impactful or favorite or story? It can be as well.
That's a really good question. Think through all the different books.
Yeah.
I kind of did a lot of rereading of some books. I reread Necessary Endings by Henry Cloud, and then I read and he's it's not a Christian book, but he's an author I believe is a Christian. And then there's another book that is not a Christian book at all, but it was called The Comfort Crisis.
Oh, I have had that recommended to me by like 5 people.
Yeah. It comes from a different perspective, but the whole idea is the crisis of just becoming comfortable in the way that we live our lives. And, typically speaking, we do seek comfort, even the air conditioning where we're kind of used to everything the way we want it.
Yeah.
And the crisis and the lack of growth that happens when you're just comfortable. So it was challenging also because you have these people that have pressed the edges of making themselves uncomfortable as I'm trying to make myself comfortable in a new home. And I'm like,
Yeah, that's such an interesting interplay too, even with the notion of what God is going to use, like consider it pure joy, my brothers, when you face trials of many kinds. But at the same time, with the acknowledgement that God didn't create us for discomfort. I don't think Eden was a naturally discomfortable place.
Right.
Even part of the curse on Adam was hardship in his work, implying that there was some sort of a lack of hardship in the productivity of the work of his hands prior to the fall. So that's an interesting interplay to tease out from a biblical theological perspective.
Oh, right. And I think that, God leads us to places of rest. And that's rest is not an uncomfortable place, right? And so if we even theologically being led to places of rest and having seasons and patterns of rest in your life are by nature comfortable. I think that this book particularly, but I think it is a reality that we maybe idolize comfort.
Oh, yeah.
And that idolization of comfort leads us into places where we don't stretch ourselves. Even, the reason I read it was we're in a season where we're choosing a uncomfortable thing, meaning we're going to move our family and go to another place and have to learn new things. And so I was kind of even looking at it. I read it initially to maybe be encouraged, like, okay, we're doing a good thing. And then you're like, oh, wow, I maybe need to make sure I don't idolize comfort myself.
Sure.
So it was a fun read, but those are some of the ones that I've read. It's hard to remember, and I also I read fiction to kind of check my brain out a little bit, and sometimes that's listening, sometimes that's actual reading.
Yeah, I'm definitely in a season. I said this last week where I need to swing the pendulum back from fiction. Not that I'm reading an unhealthy level or anything like that, but I know that there's a lot. So part of my goals for the year that I was just going over with David Hansen is, especially because I get to take sabbatical in May and June, is just a lot of reading and reading some first sources. And even, I mentioned a couple of church fathers on Sunday, but I definitely want to be doing some more patristic reading in that era, just because I know that I need to be stretched. And there's it's kind of a comfort level with reading too, right? There's a good place to be comfortable in reading, and there's a good place to slow down and spend some time and really process and go a little deeper.
Although you sounded really smart when you quoted the
Gregory of Nazianzus.
That made you sound really, really smart.
I know, that was the goal. That was really the goal.
Yeah.
That was not the goal. So, but that is a quote that's just stuck with me, and the name stuck with me too,
Yeah, I've heard you say that
which I've
before.
appreciated it. So, I think it's one of those things. Every time I say it, I'm convinced that it's one of those things that's more profound to me than than it lands necessarily. You're like, check out this incredibly profound quote, and then you say it, and people are like, oh.
You need to think about it for a minute.
Yeah.
It's not one that it's not super clear. You need to think about, what does it mean to assume?
The assumption language.
Yep.
Which could be heretical too if you misinterpret it too. Like put on humanity. It's kind of an Apollinarianism. So
Right.
So which is but
You've been sitting in that for a while. I've heard you say several times in the last few weeks, the incarnation has been striking you fresh.
Yeah.
How so?
Oh my goodness. So
can you dive into that a little bit more?
Yeah, look at this. This is a very natural transition from John's reading pattern. Like this is from Jonathan Reader's reading pattern. Like this is just the most. This is setting us up for.
You just took a natural transition
and just
destroyed a natural transition into a completely unnatural transition.
Oh boy. But that's, we can't get comfortable here. We want to continue to stretch ourselves and to grow and to lean into things. So I was just, I'll pull it up right here because I was looking through my emails. I had an email from my seminary, former seminary, which was just asking this question: are we truly scandalized by the miracle of the incarnation? And I'm excited to listen to that that little blurb from the president of the seminary. But just the notion that I think it's so easy to become complacent in the reality of the incarnation. Like, oh yeah, Jesus became human. Like that's super. Like, okay, yeah, it happened, and we know how it happened, and so I think it's easier for us to take for granted the fact that it did happen, and what it is. And that's really, as I've been able to process Christmas time and the season and just sit in what is the incarnation, it just continues to flabbergast me. That line that I was able to use, that I think from the very beginning, the incarnation was inevitable, but up until Christ happened, it was also inconceivable. I think is just, we can't diminish that. We can't diminish the inconceivability of what the incarnation is. So I was reviewing some of, I don't know if you do this, John. Sometimes you listen to your own preaching.
No,
you don't. And all the process that. So it's just kind of the review process for me. Like, okay, how did I handle myself on stage? Like, I know how I felt like I was handling myself, but how did I actually do it?
Right.
So I was reviewing some last night in my kitchen, and my daughter, Elliot, who's in second grade, walked up, and she heard me say it was inconceivable, and she goes, "Inconceivable!" I was like, "Yep, there was a miss right there from Princess Bride reference I could have used." So that's okay. So
you could have, but you did great.
Well, thank you.
I mean, you used some Santa Claus references.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
There were enough references in there probably for that. So
yeah.
So we processed the incarnation. Let's talk about that in relation to Jesus and this Christmas season and all the things that are going on.
I think, even the inconceivable nature of Jesus. There's some kind of background noise.
Yeah.
But now it's recorded for everybody to hear.
And we've noted it for you if you're listening.
There's a plane taking off somewhere.
In case you thought it was something happening with the recording,
we're not sure either.
Yeah.
Like the fact that he came as a baby, like I think when I think about that time period and Jesus in breaking into it, it was like they expected a conqueror, a king, somebody to overthrow Rome and set them free politically. But he came as a baby, as the most what's the word I'm looking for? Vulnerable thing that connect, you know what I mean? Like the most vulnerable thing that can come into the world is a baby. I remember when we were in the season of babies all around us, it was like they're just like nuggets. Like they can't really move on their own. They can't sit up. They can't do anything on their own.
Right.
That's inconceivable. That the God of the universe, the word by which it was spoken into being, has taken on human flesh and is the most vulnerable thing in the entire world right now.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah, and I've thought about, and one of the other parts of the incarnation that kind of is inconceivable. So we're trying to talk about things we don't understand.
Yeah,
is so of all the ways that God chose to do it, He chose to do it Himself, and so He chose to be present with us, and it speaks to His desire to, and this is what's also inconceivable, the desire to have a relationship with mankind. I mean, He showed up. He was present in the flesh and interacted. I don't understand why a God who's in perfect relationship with Himself, with Father, Son, the Holy Spirit, and yet still He desires, and so much so that He came to be flesh with us.
Yeah,
and wants to be with us. And so it kind of makes me react when there's these times where God feels like he's distant or not present in these moments. It's a reminder of his desire to be present, was to actually be present in the flesh. And he's not a distant, unknowable God, though inconceivable maybe, but still one that wants to be known and to be worshipped. It's pretty amazing.
I think the other thing the incarnation teaches right along with that is just the patience of God.
Yeah.
In that his redemptive plan, when it was finally enacted, was enacted with a 33-year like wick, like timer that went on. Because Jesus could have been created like Adam ostensibly was, out of nothing, fully human. Adam was obviously fully human. And Jesus could have just gone to the cross right then. And God could have been like, hey, this is the plan. And yet God worked through such normal patterns of human history to establish that redemptive purpose of Jesus. And then has waited 2,000 years to continue in that redemptive purpose through the church, which is not the most efficient means.
No.
From my perspective. Like God showing up in the sky with a banner seems like it would be more efficient, and yet God's plans work in that way. And so, Jon, when you mentioned like the question of why God, and does God seems distant, or does God want to know me? Like just the context in which he has moved towards humanity says that he is not bothered by the slowness of that pace. And he is confident enough in the outcome, wholly confident, because he is wholly sovereign, of eternity with him, that the process doesn't bother him.
Yeah.
The process bothers us, right? That's the tension we feel in our heart. That's often the tension I feel in my heart. The why God, why now, what's next? He's not bothered by that.
No. We're bothered by inefficiency and
seemingly
failed plans, or even like the way that Jesus came into the world and how that has switched the power dynamic, right? Like the God that holds, that can speak things into existence, came and experienced humanity in some of the most vulnerable ways, right? In the most broken ways. You dug into it a little bit of like, who's your father?
Yeah.
It seems like you came from, we don't know who your father is. Like Joseph wasn't it? We knew that.
Yeah.
But the Jesus assuming humanity and coming and experiencing it in the way that he did, has the one that can hold the power didn't grasp it. Back to Philippians 2 when you were in that passage, it wasn't something to be grasped, and yet the way that he laid his life down flips this power dynamic. You don't keep power by holding on to it and defending it.
Right.
You give it up, and then you really truly are free.
Right.
Right. You're really truly free to what is power anyway? But it's just that was been a pondering of all of the things that Jesus came as a baby. In the wisdom of God, undermine our human structure and ideal, empower in, just loving people in all of it. Go. What are you going to
No, I don't necessarily. It's just the nature of the incarnation. It's just so
inconceivable.
Yeah, scandalous too. I like that word, scandalous, in regards to that.
And I think the 33 years and some of the things that you touched on in your sermon about experiencing humanity was it's just even eye-opening for me. The way that you looked at Mary and Joseph's experience at the birth, just to think about. I never thought through, what did they think about touching the incarnate creator of the universe, and what did they think would happen at that moment? And even just experiencing ostracization from your family and your friends, and it's so human. It's experiencing what that's like. we just have a different picture oftentimes at Christmas of Jesus, and that he doesn't know what it's like for us when he really needed to experience. In 33 years, he experienced what we experienced as humans, and that he's not far from us. He can relate, and yeah.
So we had some people over on Friday, and one of the things that we did was do a 64 song bracket tournament of voting on the best Christmas songs of all time. So we had 64 different, and it wasn't particularly well seated. So some, like in the second round, O Come, Emmanuel, and O Holy Night went up against each other.
No,
so
that's no good.
Yeah, there's some songs like Feliz Navidad that easily got knocked out in the first round, and some songs that didn't go as far as they could have because they were seated wrong.
Sure.
But the winner, understandably, because there was just no song to knock it off, was Silent Night. And I think Silent Night I don't like Silent Night particularly. I love the song. I love the tradition and what it feels like. But even just Silent Night, Holy Night, all is calm, all is bright. I just don't think that represents what the birth, that doesn't represent what a birth looks like. Certainly not a birth in a stable.
Right.
When you're visited by shepherds that is not calm. That is chaotic. That is confusing. It can speak to, I think that can speak to the notion of what it is, but I think there has been times that we've mischaracterized what Christmas is. And we made Jesus seem like he's stepping into something that isn't our experience, but he really genuinely was stepping into our experience.
Right.
In a profound, beautiful, unbelievable way. I was leaving church yesterday, and I was trying to corral my 4 children out the door. And I was like, hey, this is something Jesus didn't experience.
Right.
Like parenting. And then I'm like, he's parented billions.
I was about to say, I think he knows what it's like to have disobedient children.
Created in his own image, with that expectation of what they should be doing. But just that his experience and what he experienced and how he chose, he knew, and he did it. It's unbelievable. So,
I mean, you brought up songs, so we just can't get through this without having the conversation about Mary Did You Know?
About Mary Did You Know? Yeah, I know.
Did you get any feedback yesterday? I'm kind of curious.
I got a lot of feedback.
I'm guessing maybe you did.
I got a lot of people saying, I'm with you, Dave. It's a great song. I had a lot of people saying it's a great song, but obviously it's not the best song, which I've just mostly defended my position as Colton forced me to.
I know, we know that. Yes.
Colton catalyzed this in me.
Yeah.
If he hadn't been antagonistic towards it, going into the season, I didn't really think twice about Mary Did You Know?
But now you've labeled yourself for all to see, Dave's favorite song is definitely Mary Did You Know?
It's a good song. It's a good song. I'll take it.
Do you want to write the world right now? And what is your favorite Christmas song? If you could pick the number 1 winner.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think
it's not Silent Night. Now we know that.
Yeah.
I think it's what context would it be? Because there are some, Mary Did You Know has some phenomenal lines about Jesus. I think in further conversation, and Colton listens to this podcast, so he'll hear this. I think about the context of worship songs a lot. I want to sing worship songs to God.
Right.
I certainly don't have a desire to sing a quizzical song about Mary.
Right.
From a worship perspective.
My daughter Eden actually had a thought about Mary Did You Know as a worship song, and her response was, we don't sing worship to Mary.
Yeah,
so
certainly don't.
When you're literally saying Mary Did You Know, we're singing to Mary. So therefore, it is categorically not a worship song.
Not a worship song.
Yeah.
And I would push in, there's some songs that we probably sing or are sung in the church writ large that are not sung to God, or they're sometimes sung more about our experience.
Sure.
I think that worship, just like preaching, just like any of those things, should help us exalt God in our hearts.
Right.
And so Mary Did You Know, I think, remarkably does do that.
Sure.
But I don't have any desire to, I don't know. I think it's a great special in a service.
For sure.
I think it's a wonderful special. I think it asks wonderful questions. O Come, Emmanuel. It's just really, really good.
Yeah, it is good.
So Christmas music, I'm just astounded at the lyrics. There's so many good turns of phrase in so many of these songs. Joy to the World, too, is just one of those, I think, where you get like, Oh Holy Night, Mary Did You Know, Come O Come Emmanuel, these like ponderous, powerful, kind of slow burn songs with just a bunch of theological punch. I just like subbing that out with Joy to the World. Just this celebration.
Sure.
Like, the Lord has come. He's here. Let's go. So I don't know. I'd put any of those traditional ones up there.
I'm struggling because I just have the lyrics in my mind and I don't know which song they belong to.
For sure. Go for it.
Like I think my favorite line, my favorite lyric is, until he appeared and the soul felt its worth.
Oh, Holy Night.
Like, Oh, Holy Night is one of them. Okay. So I love that lyric. Until he appeared and then the soul felt its actual worth because God put on human flesh. And it leads to Easter. I think that's the other thing. Like some of my favorite Christmas songs, you wouldn't hear as like traditional Christmas songs. At Last the King by the Grey Havens is probably still my favorite Christmas song. That's not necessarily a Christmas song, but it talks about like at last the King has arrived on a dark night, which is true. But it leads to, there's also this painting of the picture of he's saying no to Satan. Like, I'm not going to bow to you right now. I will eventually, but I'm not going to give up my throne. I'm going to do it in a way that you hadn't expected.
Right.
That song leads my heart to Easter too.
Yep.
You had a piece of that in this sermon of the incarnation naturally leads our hearts to Easter. He assumed our experience to the point of death.
Right.
And I think that is one of the growing awarenesses in me in the way that we approach these big church holidays, maybe even in the evangelical church, is that Easter is all about the redemptive purpose of God. And Christmas is sometimes minimized as like this fun, exciting, like Jesus is born. I have, especially when I was doing a lot more children's ministry, I remember writing a blog post that I just feel really, really strongly about that. And apologies for anyone that this offends, but like we shouldn't throw birthday parties for Jesus, for our kids. I think it just dramatically reduces the beauty of the incarnation and what Christmas is when we're like, yay, Jesus is 2,023 years old or whatever. Like it's not about Jesus's birthday. I know I think that's trying to use language that's helpful for children.
Right.
But I think children can understand that there's a beautiful mystery that's far more profound than what we experience.
Right.
It's not a celebration of Jesus's birth. It's a celebration of God's incarnation. And I don't know how we talk about that without using that word. And I don't know why we should be afraid of that word. But there's such a profundity to Christmas that I love to dwell in.
And I think even when I think about like grace, the people that have thrown birthday parties for Jesus, because it's trying to step away from Christmas and Santa Claus.
Yes,
I think there's the heart behind it is to let's keep Christ in Christmas kind of thing. That little snaggy tagline that's in people's yards sometimes.
Right.
It's a there's tensions to hold, and that's a stepping away from this is about Santa Claus. No, it's really not.
Yeah.
It's about Christ, and there's something there. But can you take it? Can you use the language of incarnation? And little kids can understand big words probably better than we ever imagined that they can.
Or even little kids could probably understand the concept of the incarnation. Maybe even sometimes better than adults.
Right.
We sometimes grow up and we lose our
wonder,
the childlike wonder, the creativity, the thought of, oh yeah, these things can absolutely exist. And as growing up, I hope my mom doesn't listen to this podcast.
Well, most people in the U.S. do, so that's
hopefully we'll pass out past Linda Uten in Plano, Texas. But we grew up doing a birthday cake every Christmas morning was for Jesus, and all the grandkids were together and we blew out the candles for Jesus. And
did you do 2,000 plus?
No, we didn't. We didn't do the counting. We just did Happy Birthday Jesus, and we sang Happy Birthday to Jesus, and it was a way for us to make sure that we did not.
You turned out all right.
I turned out okay. I mean, some things, but it was a way for us to make sure that we understood why we did Christmas, because we still did all the presents and all the things like that. And I didn't do that with my kids. I didn't carry that forward. But we also didn't do the Santa Claus thing. And again, not to ruin, if there's a lot of children that listen to this podcast, which
mostly elementary
age kids do.
Kindergarten to second grade-ish.
We didn't do Santa Claus for that reason. We just didn't want to give a fictitious guy wearing a red suit any credit because we thought there was so much more to talk about.
Yeah.
So,
well, you talk about credit too with Christmas. Like, I'm not going to give up any credit for the gifts I get from my kids.
I worked hard for that.
I know. I thought about it. I bought it. I wrapped it. I did it. I want them to be saying, thank you, Dad.
That's right.
Thank you, jolly fat man.
That's right.
From somewhere.
That's right. I said, kids, your mom thought about it. Your mom wrapped it. She did all the hard work. I'm not going to give credit to somebody that doesn't exist.
Yep.
I want my kids to know that they're loved. And, that's what Christmas is about is sometimes just making sure that we pass. I'm preparing the sermon or the talk for next week and Christmas Eve. And just thinking about that gift of love and again, talking about the presence of Christ is you show someone you love by showing up. And God said, I love you, has demonstrated his love for us. But he showed up, and that's what another kind of cool thing about the incarnation is. He showed his love for us by being present with us, and not an absent God, a present God.
Not above the muck and mire of life, right? Like in it, born in it, living in it,
literally, in such a profound way.
Yeah.
That's okay. I use this verse all the time. Romans 5:8. That God demonstrates his love for us, and that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Right. And the word demonstrates there is proves, really. And it's been such a reframing for me over the last probably 15 years of sitting in that verse, and just in those moments where I'm like, God, how do I know? How do I really know? Like, can you just show up and give me evidence? And just he doesn't have to. He did. Like, he did.
Right.
And it's okay. Like, my vision of God's plan needs to be bigger than my expectation of his movement in this moment.
Yeah.
Like, God's plan is an eternal plan, and God's vision is an eternal vision. And if I don't feel that or sense that right now, who cares?
And isn't he so kind to say, remember and look back and watch the story he's writing?
Yeah.
Like, it takes the pressure off the moment. God, where were you in this moment? And it lets you just kind of step back and say, where are you in this story?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think there's a gift of faith sometimes to look at somebody else's story and look at the muck and mire and say, but God's working. Like, look at these pieces. Look at what he's held together. Not to say that I know what God's doing,
right, or
I'm calling the outcome of this thing, but like, where is his presence being felt and known, and and you can see the kingdom inbreaking,
right,
through the fruit of the Spirit being born in people, right? Like, there's moments, and how do you know what love and joy and peace are if you don't? If the opposite hasn't been felt and experienced.
Right.
And I don't want to say that, I don't want to take that too far. But yeah, like the kindness of God to throughout the psalm say, remember what I've done. Look, remember, like, just sit and remember me for a minute and see how I've been a part of human history from the beginning. Particularly with Jesus, but from the beginning, I've been leading my people and guiding them. I'm beyond this one moment. There's a story that's writing that's going towards redemption.
Right.
That it's good for us to keep our eyes on that story, especially in the moments that are super hard.
Yeah.
Because there are super hard moments.
Right.
Not to diminish those at all.
It's a profound, rich, beautiful thing.
Hard thing.
Hard thing. It's a journey we get to walk. And just as a reminder, and it continues to come up, it's a journey that's best walked with people. That's the only healthy way to do it. Is to be reminded when you're in seasons of especially that hardship, that like have people say, hey, lift your eyes. Lift your eyes to the Lord.
Let me lift your eyes.
Yeah. Let me remind you of what God has done and what God is doing. Maybe if you can't see it or don't even know. So it's really rich. We're gonna answer a random question here. So
somebody's going to. It's not going to be Dave.
Yeah, no,
initially,
it never
it'll be somebody
is.
else.
So we spin this entirely random spinner, and it doesn't land on me, but it might. Who knows? We'll see.
Today's the day.
Question number 46 on this list. Who is it?
Me.
Oh, Whitney.
Did you see the eye roll? I'm just being sassy over here.
That's how it goes. What's your favorite part of the county fair?
Cheese curds.
Cheese curds?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so where do you go for cheese curds? What county fair do you go to for cheese curds?
I don't go to many county fairs.
What are you doing?
I don't
What's
know.
wrong?
I don't know. But the Amherst one, is that the one that I go to? Yep, Amherst. So it's like middle of July-ish, super hot. There's a 4-H that does like milkshakes and cheese curds in there. Fried cheese curds.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
It's hard to get
it's
wrong.
Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Why doesn't any restaurant have cheese curds
that level?
anywhere like fair curds?
Yeah,
Like
I don't know.
the food truck fair curds.
Yep,
What's up?
I don't know.
Why does every other restaurant be like, you know what they want? Breading. That's what they want. They want a lot of breading.
Is it the freshness of the curds at the fair? I've never been to a Wisconsin
Both.
fair.
So there's
therefore.
breading. There's a different, like the Cisco truck breading
Mhm.
curds are just too thick and,
Oh, okay.
but there's
Yeah.
like so fair curds are breaded as you go.
Okay.
Sometimes.
I mean, the one that I get them from, they're going through the stages of breading it, and it's like
Like they're making them fret. They're breading them.
Yeah.
It's not, is it frozen? Frozen cheese curds? Or are
they're fresh, squeaky
Cool.
clean cheese curds
Squeaky cheese curds that are breaded
Yeah.
and then fried
Yeah.
right there.
right there.
Okay, so
Oh, that sounds so good right now. Come
You
on.
have to wait till July.
the Rosholt Fair, right? The Woodlands Youth runs the cheese curd stand.
Oh, really? Wow.
And it's a fundraiser. And so I spent 4 hours making cheese curds
Mm-hmm.
this summer, and I can say that they are not fresh.
They're not fresh.
No, nor are they
different.
hand breaded in the moment.
Huh.
They're good. They're good.
Wow.
Probably not as good as the ones I.
I think
So,
I
they're
think I
not
kind of
that-
wanted
no,
to
so-
say do better.
So
Like we can do better.
yeah,
Let's.
this is a bulletin.
I know. Like, do better.
Yeah, no, they're not that, but yeah,
The
cheese
rides
curds.
terrify me. I think did you have a point about they were on the like highway 6 hours ago, and now you're like getting on a ride that's twirling you upside down and holding you in? No,
Yeah.
thank you.
Oh my word!
Not doing that.
Yeah, that's terrifying. And it's when you take something apart and put it together, take it apart, put it together, take it apart, put it together, over and over and over. Things happen. Things
like,
loosen up.
There are screws missing.
Therefore,
You're implying that the carnies are not on top of this, though.
I am making that implication, and I stand by the implication.
That they're not carefully checking every component before they start spinning you at high velocity.
Not carefully enough to put my child
Oh, okay.
in that position.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
also the barns that all of the heads are facing, like the butts are facing you when you walk through the barns. That's terrifying too. Like I feel like I'm gonna get kicked by something or splattered on like
Oh,
I just.
Yeah.
Is this all at the Amherst Fair?
They're all like I don't know many fairs.
Yeah.
I'm a cheese curd. Cheese curds. See you at the cheese curd stand.
Whitney's just outside at the table, just like have another order of cheese curds. Yeah.
Do you want to share with me?
Have you had a bloomin' onion?
Oh,
Yeah.
I love blooming onions.
Those
good.
things are amazing. So
I've not ever been to the Wisconsin State Fair. So you said county fair, but the Wisconsin State Fair.
Yeah.
I've been to the Minnesota State Fair, which is pretty stinking good.
Yeah, I've heard it was good. I never got
Never
a chance to
went.
go.
Oh boy.
The only state fair
you're
I've
not
ever
allowed
been
to go anymore.
No, I'm not. I'm out. The only state fair I've been to is Texas. This is the Texas
And?
State Fair.
Texas State Fair.
Oh yeah, we fry it all. Like we do a lot of fried everything.
Just outside, like, because
Yeah.
that's how hot it is, probably.
yeah. Of
Mhm.
course.
Yeah.
Where do you do fairs?
Well, no.
No,
I
she's
just mean,
saying
like,
he
all the
fries-
frying's happening outside.
Oh yeah, for sure.
On the hood of the
Everyone's
car
right.
kind of thing.
Yeah, on the hood of the car. No, and then there's the 1 year in the Texas State Fair. You may or may not know this. Is we have Big Tex. You know who Big Tex is?
Nope.
Big Tex is this giant blow up Texas guy with a big 10-gallon hat, and
Okay.
so it's called Big Tex. And then 1 year, Big Tex got a hole, and
Oh, no.
and just deflated, and it was this big, thing.
Controversy.
Oh man,
Drama.
I mean, to hear everybody like talk about
The
Big
death of
Tex
Big
and the
Tex.
death of Big Tex.
The death of Big
It
Tex.
was he was
Big moment.
fixed eventually, but it was a big deal.
Hmm.
So
Do you have a favorite fair food outside of cheese curds?
I actually haven't been to the Texas State Fair. I was only there once. I was young and I was poor, so I didn't get anything to eat.
You have to be, I mean,
You have to
Yeah, you have to be.
you have
Put
to
your
be
pennies
of
away to
means.
go to the stair.
You have to be
go to
of
the fair.
means to eat food at the fair.
Yeah, and so like I think I just tried anything fried. I think I would go for that.
Yeah.
So I don't have a favorite fair food.
Yeah.
I'm willing to
Try some things
try
this
some
summer.
things. I'm super excited about cheese curds now. So
Amherst Fair seems like where it's at. Rushhold Fair, definitely go to support Woodlands Youth. And the curds aren't bad. Like I ate quite a number of them.
I'm sure you did.
But they're not fresh like that.
Right.
Lincoln County Fair is one that I went to a lot up in Merrill.
Yep.
Because lived in Merrill, that situation. So that's a great fair. Lots of my wife and I early in our marriage had a bloomin' onion. They went on the tilt-a-whirl. And
that's a bad idea.
That was the rest of the day.
Yeah.
So that's where that went. So
do you still like bloomin' onions after that?
I like bloomin' onions. Won't get close to a tilt-a-whirl. So anything that spins is a no bueno for me.
Oh, gotcha.
When does that change? Like as a kid, you used to like. Were you swingers?
My kids spin like crazy.
And on swings, right? Like you remember you used to like spin up and then it would you'd wind it up.
I can't even swing.
I can't either. I get dizzy on it.
Mm-hmm.
What happened?
Oh, we got old.
Something happens.
Too many Q-tips in our ears.
Something happens. Yeah.
So
anyway.
Yeah. Well, hey, this is great.
Question.
Our next, just as a reminder again, for those of you listeners, I mean, John teased New Year's Eve as something exciting.
Something exciting.
Our listeners know that something exciting is this.
Yeah.
So
it'll be a lot of fun, actually. So, I'm looking forward to it.
I think it could be really, really good.
It's going to be really good.
So, yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to
Thanks for your confidence, John. We need it.
So it'll be great. And Colton doing worship is just going to be really, really sweet too.
It'll be a fun
sweet
time.
Day.
But before that, it's Christmas Eve. So Merry Christmas to everyone.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
We will see you again in 2 weeks. We'll be back on for the New Year's, but there's no.
But I was thinking we're not probably going to record again on Monday.
No, we're not going to record again on Monday, being as that's Christmas Day.
That's Christmas. No, that's New Year's Day.
We'll be off for a little bit. So
Got it. Okay.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry
Bye.
Christmas.
We'll see you.